15 years ago my parents declared me legally dead to steal my money. Now they want to reconcile. This story began over 30 years ago in Germany. I had just turned 16 and was accused of stealing a neighbor's car and wrecking another neighbor's fence with it while running away from the police. I was drunk when the police picked me up, as it was legal to drink in Germany at this age. I proclaimed my innocence but nobody believed me. I was convicted and sentenced to 500 hours of community service because I was unrepentant. My parents used it as a tool to take away my time with my friends. They got the judge to agree that I had to work Friday and Saturday evenings at the THW, which was an organization that provided disaster relief and sometimes soup kitchens. Also, I lost my license for mopeds and could not get a driver's license till 20. In addition, when I finally wanted to get my license I would have to pass a psychological test. Also, I had saved about $5,000 for a car, but this was used to pay for damages. Sadly, it worked. My friends soon lost interest in me because I was not available to party during the weekend. Also, we were very vehicle oriented and I was destined to be a pedestrian for 4 years. An uncle of mine, who led the local THW, conveniently lost my timesheets for my community service work, which forced me to work there for 14 months. By the time I finished, I had a bit over 900 hours in community service. When I came out, my parents told me they had asked my uncle to keep me there longer so that I would be forced to learn to take responsibility for my actions. They also justified this, saying that they were doing it for my own good and to save me from my friends. However, I finished my hours unrepentant and furious with them for essentially doubling my sentence. When I finished, I was in great shape and did well in school, as I lost my friends and had no interest in acquiring new ones after seeing how fickle they were. Focusing on academics was an outlet that was not forced on me by others and I enjoyed it. Then I found out who had actually crashed the car. I told the police and my parents and tried to get my sentence repealed. I tried to have a retrial but failed because my sentence was already served. On top of that, the guy who actually did the deed was sentenced to only 100 hours of community service. At his trial it came out that several people had known it was him, including my parents, who made him pay for the damages almost a year ago. They had put the money in a bank account, which they told me I would get, once I had finished my education. They also told me they added what would now be equal to $8,000 to the savings account for the hours I had put in with the THW, which was a generous wage for a teenager. Still, I was furious with them because I still had to wait until I was 20 to get a driver's license. If they had told me sooner I could have gotten the sentence repealed. Also, while they claimed I would get this money in about 5 years, for now they had essentially stolen my savings. They refused to give it back because I was 17 and too immature to make my own choices. After a huge fight I took my tent and camped out in the woods. I still went to school every day but refused to come back home. After a week they called the cops on me and they took the tent and forced me to go home. However, once the police left, so did I. I slept wherever I could, which was mostly barns and in the woods if the weather was good, since I now had no tent. On occasion the police found me. My parents called them every day for help. If caught, I would be forced to go home. They'd lock me in a room, but I simply waited for school and disappeared after school was out. When I finally turned 18, the police could not force me to go home. I only had half a year left of school, so I continued like this. I had no friends because I smelled funny and no interest in getting any friends because I was hurt. I was not going to let anybody close to hurt me again. Despite it all, I managed to finish school with good grades. After school I used the mandatory military service to disappear. I volunteered for service abroad, which meant Eastern Europe at the time. After 2 years, I was done and had a nice nest egg. I enrolled in a university and studied chemistry. I found 3 good friends and met my first girlfriend, to whom I am now married. Everything went well for a while. Then my life spiraled. I was 29 and working on my doctorate when my parents managed to find me. Occasionally they convinced the police to look for me as a missing case. The police usually found me and I'd tell them that I was fine but wanted no contact with my parents, and that was it. The police would deliver the message and say that they couldn't tell them where I was and that they should please stop involving the police. Then my parents had a genius idea. They filed paperwork that I had died in an accident in Italy. They were my next of kin, so the police gave them my address. Meanwhile my bank account was frozen and the university told me that I was no longer allowed to work on my doctorate while being legally dead. Everything in my life stopped working for me. 2 days into this disaster and my parents are in front of my flat demanding to talk to me, telling me that I forced them to take this step. They forced their way inside my home and told me that they were staying until I was willing to talk to them and mend bridges. I told them if they insisted, they could have the flat. I took my laptop, a few mementos, important documents and a bag full of clothes. I left the keys and walked out. It took me a few months to convince the bureaucracy that tales of my death were widely exaggerated. My landlord was very understanding and gave me everything that was left in my flat after my parents understood that I would not be coming back. They mostly took the photos I had left in the flat. They left a letter which I burned. I was really pissed because being dead caused so many troubles. I was afraid they would find me again, so I took a job in another city as soon as I finished my doctorate. That was about 15 years ago. They have found me again. This time they sent a relative who told me that they were sorry. That they did mean for me to flip out and abandon my house when they found me back then. They were sorry for letting their emotions get the better of them. They would respect it if I still wanted no contact, but they would love to have my wife and I for dinner. Honestly, I am not sure what to do.